parable of Balthazar. Walking upon a battlefield strewn with the dead, Balthazar, the god of war, blessed each of the corpses for their valor, until he came across one who had not fought but had cowered. Balthazar could smell the stink of fear, and so he reached into the man and pulled forth his soul. He held it in place as he scrutinized it. The soul was no more courageous in death than it had been in life, and it trembled and whimpered. It bowed its spine and hid its face. "You," said the god, "do not belong here. You sully these brave men and women who died in honorable combat. You will cower behind them no more." Balthazar folded the soul, bent it and broke it, crushed it until it was hidden inside his clasped hands. Then he opened his mouth wide and shoved the soul in, consuming it whole. Once it was gone, Balthazar shouted to the dead, "You carried this coward when he lived. Now I carry him, for he serves as my reminder that strength and courage are never to be taken for granted." A parable of Dwayna. Upon a cold, moonless night, there came a man to a farm. The night was so dark he carried a lit candle to find a path. The farmer heard him and called out, "What business have you here?" The farm was dark as pitch. "I seek shelter from the coming storm," said the traveler. "Would you invite me to your hearth?" The farmer feared riding out the storm in the dark, but more than that, he feared strangers. The farmer replied, "No, I cannot." Saddened, the traveler wished the farmer well and forged onward. Farther down the hill, he found a family who gave him hospitality. The farmer suffered the darkest night of his life. A tree fell on his house, crushing his leg. He did not call to Dwayna for help, as he knew he didn't deserve it. For him, the morning never came. A parable of Grenth. To Grenth's ears there came a cry from the soul of one who had suffered long and profoundly. The god was drawn to the woman who called, for she had no mercy left in her. Seeking vengeance for her husband's violence against her, she evoked Grenth's judgment upon the husband even as she plunged the knife into his heart. As Grenth stood over her and the husband she had murdered, he saw that she had loved him once, that she had borne him children, and that she had been a good and loyal wife. He saw that the man had never loved her, but had resented her and their children for draining his pockets. He saw that the man had not been loyal and had never been kind. He saw the abuses he had drained upon his wife. And so the god of death said, "I find you guilty, woman, of murdering your husband. When it's your time, you will pay for what you have done." "I understand," said the woman as she bowed before Grenth. "And now," said Grenth, "I give you a choice. You may come with me now and watch your husband suffer for the wrongs he has done, or you may walk away and I will claim you only when it is your time." The woman said, "I gave my husband my love and life. I will come now to see this tale's end and to share his suffering. It will hurt him more to know that I am witnessing his pain." And so it was. A parable of Lyssa. From out of the darkness there stepped a child into the campfire's light, and she said, "I am Lyssa, and I have come to teach you what is illusion and what is truth." But the soldiers did not believe her. They laughed and said, "If you are Lyssa, then show us your beauty, for we can surely use it on this dark night. We have lost hope that this war will end." The child approached, and her smile held divine grace.
"Share your food with me, and in return for your kindness, I will show you beauty the likes of you will never see again."
And so the kind soldiers did, and the child ate with ravenous hunger. When the last bone had been tossed aside and the last bean swallowed, the child began to skip around the outside of the campfire. She touched each man in his head, one at a time, as they laughed and jibed her until at one time they fell into a deep slumber. Each man dreamed a different dream, but each dream was a vision of the life they would lead once the war was over. Wives, children, riches, open air, health, and peace. When they awoke upon the morrow, the child was gone and the enemy had arrived. They fought joyfully with all their might, because they all remembered their dreams and knew they would win the war. Each man put his heart and soul into the battle, and each man, one at a time, was slaughtered. A parable of Melandru. One day the goddess Melandru came upon a den of foxes, and she heard within the hungry cries of kids. She bent her ear to the ground and learned that the mother fox had been killed by a farmer. The cubs were doomed to starve to death, and thus was the way of nature. Melandru sought out the farmer and asked him why he had killed the fox, thus condemning its kids to sure death. The farmer explained that the fox had killed one of his chickens, and therefore he had taken his vengeance upon the fox. Thus, said Melandru, is the way of nature. Later that year, the farmer prayed to her, calling her name in his darkest moment. In his presence, she saw that he was in mourning, and asked what had happened. "Wolves," he said, "have taken my daughter. Can you not bring her back to me?" Melandru was not unkind, as she said, "No, thus is the way of nature."